In this session, we will discuss the effect of tax policy. We will consider the effect of tax policy on demand side and also the supply side. First, we consider the effect of tax policy on demand side. Now, as long as we consider the effect on the demand side, the analysis of a change in tax produces results analogous to government spending. That is, the demand side effect of a tax policy is same as that of government spending. Suppose that government reduces tax. There is a tax cut. Now, tax cut increases the disposable income of the households so that they will spend more. It will stimulate their consumption. A tax cut by increasing disposable income stimulates consumption. And suppose that government sells bonds to the public to replace the revenue lost by a tax cut. Bonds to the public to replace income lost by tax cuts. The same crowding out process occurs as in the case of a bond financed increase in government spending. Equilibrium rate of interest will increase, investment will fall, and investment will fall, and as equilibrium rate of interest increases, there will be an interest-induced rise in savings, and consumption decreases to the pre-tax level. What was the consumption before the tax cut? So, due to a tax cut, there is no change in aggregate demand. Initially, consumption will be stimulated, but when bonds are issued to replace the lost income, interest rate will increase, investment will decrease, saving will be promoted, aggregate demand will remain the same. If a revenue lost as a result of the tax cut is financed by spending new currency, what will happen? There is an increase in aggregate demand as price increases. And here, as in the previous analysis, an increase in the supply of money affect the price level. So, from the demand side, a tax cut financed by bond sale has no effect on aggregate demand. If a tax cut is financed by printing new currency, aggregate demand will increase and only prices will increase because equilibrium values are determined by supply side factors. Now, let us see the supply side effects of a tax cut. If the tax cut is a lump sum cut, if the tax cut is in the form of a lump sum cut, say every household received a tax reduction equal to $100, then demand side effect is all that we need to consider. If there is a reduction in tax cuts, in tax equal to $100, then disposable income will increase, consumption will increase, and how it is financed determines what happens to aggregate demand, as in the previous analysis. But suppose that the tax cut is in the form of a reduced income tax rate. Tax cut is in the form of a reduction in income tax rates, say from 40% to 20%. There is a reduction in income tax rates from say 40% to 20%. In the classical model, if there is a reduction in the income tax rates, there is an incentive to supply more labor. There is an incentive on labor supply. As tax rate reduction increases, return from working 1 hour, it has an incentive to supply more labor. So it has an effect on the supply side of the model and hence output and employment. So if there is an income tax reduction, it will have supply side effects, and as it has supply side effect, it will affect output and employment. Let us see these effects. As we have studied earlier, demand for labor, MDL, supply of labor, W by P0, equilibrium level of employment. Equilibrium level of employment. And from the production function, equilibrium level of output is YE, LE, and aggregate supply corresponding to equilibrium level and aggregate demand determines level of income Y0 corresponding price P0. Y0, P0. Now suppose that this was the situation when TY, income tax rate was 40%. That is, we assume that when the income tax rate was 40%, labor supply, labor demand schedules, equilibrium level of income and employment, the corresponding price level, output, etc. are given. YE, so YE, LE, Y0, whatever, or YE. Now, a cut in tax rate from 40% to 20%. A cut in tax rate from 40% to 20% increases labor supply as real wage increases. So the labor supply schedule shift towards the right. S dash L. Because now the new equilibrium real wage is 1 minus Ty into W by P. W by P minus Ty into W by P. And where Ty is the marginal income tax rate. Marginal income tax rate. Now, the new labor supply schedule LS is equal to G of 1 minus Ty into W by P. The new labor supply schedule is given by G of 1 minus Ty into W by P. That is, for a given pre-tax real wage W by P, a cut in income tax represents increase in after-tax real wage and thus increase in the supply of labor. So, labor supply schedule shifts towards the right and the level of employment increases from LE to L1 with the W by P equal to W by P1. W by P is equal to W by P1. And so, and in the second part, aggregate production function, labor supply increases from LE to L1, output increases from YE to Y1, YE to Y1. And in the lower segment, output increases to Y1, demand is not affected and price decreases to P1. Price decreases to P1. So, this is the real supply side effect of a marginal income tax cut. So, fiscal policy in the form of an income tax cut has supply side effects. It increases the level of employment and output. W by P, real wage decreases because price level decreases here. Price level decreases here. As aggregate demand is not affected, because money supply is not affected, an increase in aggregate supply with a constant aggregate demand reduces the price level, real wage decreases. And in the classical model, real wage is assumed to be, or wage is assumed to be, prices and wages are assumed to be flexible. So, before concluding, let me say two words about monetary policy. In the classical model, quantity of money determines the price level, something which we have studied. It determines nominal income. It cannot affect the values of any of the real variables in the system. So, in this sense, monetary policy is very important in the classical model because stable money supply is required for stable prices. If there is erratic increase or decrease in the supply of money, there will be price fluctuations. So, in that sense, monetary policy is very important. In another sense, monetary policy is not important in the classical model. This is because money or monetary policy cannot affect the values of any of the real variables like output, employment, interest rate, etc. So, money or monetary policy is important in one sense as it determines the price level. It is not important in another sense as it cannot affect the values of real variables. As we will see later, according to Milton Friedman and other monetarists, a monetary policy rule is what is required to insulate the economy from the policy discretions of monetary authorities to ensure long-run price stability. And this is all about classical model of employment and output determination, price level determination, and the impact of fiscal and monetary policies in the classical model of income, output, employment, and price level determination.